What's up everyone, Tactical Turtleneck here, and there has been an update in the Rich High versus Buffalo Public Schools situation. Now if you haven't seen the original video yet, I highly recommend going and watching it first. It's going to be linked in the description below, and it lays out exactly how the Buffalo school system allegedly buried child abuse cases, deleted footage, and obstructed justice while Rich, a detective with the SVU, called them out on it. Now, remember, anything that I do not have a source for on screen, which will be most things, is either through a private email or an allegation. So as always, I encourage you to watch the unsubscribe update video yourself, as well as, of course, Angrycops, and follow along with what they're putting out as it is directed to them. Now, you'd think after being exposed, the district would try and walk it back, or perhaps, God forbid, show a little concern for the children that they're apparently responsible for. But no, they ran straight to the media, crying foul like someone accused their grandma of arson. And what did the media do? They locked arms with the school district and said, "How dare he? Who is this angry man who is a cop?" Suddenly, the focus wasn't on what Rich revealed. It was on him himself. They called him a liar. They've tried to smear his name with distorted headlines and selected half-truths. And here's how that went down. They accused him of headbutting children. You mean the time he got into an off-duty scuffle with a 17-year-old drug dealer who swung on him first. Rich defended himself, which I think we all should do. By the way, that kid has now been arrested multiple times for breaking into cars and slinging dope.
The one that was wild is they said you headbutted a children in the face.
Yeah, they tried to say children. That kid's been arrested, like, I say kid, he's younger than me, but he was 17. He was selling dope outside my friend's house in a different town, and I confronted him about it, and then he swung at me, and I headbutted him in the mouth. And then we called the police. They showed up. They ended up tasing and arresting one of the dummies that was a part of their little gang. And since then, like, that dude that I got in a fight with has been arrested like numerous times for like breaking into people's cars and dope and just being an overall turd.
Still a child, though, apparently, you know, when it fits the headline. Then they claimed that he tackled a black man for having a mental health episode. You mean the guy who was flashing his fucking penis to traffic, bashed cars with his skateboard, including Rich's, I believe, and got cleared by a mental health team before Rich arrived.
Like, you're just holding him down. You're like, he's fine. The guy on the ground's like, yeah, no, I'm good.
Yeah, he says, I've been waiting for this all day. Because what the news doesn't put out there is that there were already 7 911 calls about him, that he was flashing his dick to people crossing the street and trying to hit cars and people with his skateboard before I showed up. And then the police went there, and because there was no complainant to be like, yeah, that's the guy, I want him arrested for flashing me and trying to hit me, they were like, hey, you're the guy that's causing an issue, you need to settle down. They had a mental health counselor with them who deemed him to be sane and fine, and they didn't need to put him into, you know, the loony bin for the day to get him checked out. And they left. And then 3 minutes later, I showed up. And then 3 minutes later, he motherfucked me and then tried to hit my truck with his skateboard. And then we scuffled. And then that was it.
Yeah, he sounds stable. Still, the media ran with it, still painting him as unstable, aggressive, untrustworthy. And then people started calling them on their shit. The fat electrician and others, especially Unsub, started dragging up the very real mountain of crimes committed inside Buffalo schools. And suddenly, those headlines started softening. The word untruths started to disappear. Legalese started showing up. Someone got real nervous. But the damage was already done. And now we're talking about damage that matters. Rich has now shared even more. And here's what we've learned. First, a student's written statement was sent to Rich's personal email, not through police channels, which means he can legally talk about it. In the letter, a student describes reporting an assault to a teacher, only to be brushed off. The teacher asked if there's proof, which is not their place to say, that's for an investigator. Another promised to deal with it the next day, and didn't. About half the 7th grade had already heard about the attack before a third teacher finally took it seriously and tried to notify the administration. That letter? Well, it was withheld during the actual police investigation. The writer was instructed by school leadership not to cooperate. The case was closed later with no charges, but the school had no way of knowing that at the time. Well, they buried evidence in an active investigation. It's not policy failure, that's fucking obstruction. In another case, Rich discovered a report about a student assault that was labeled information only, a category that doesn't trigger a police investigation. It landed on his desk by accident and was finally assigned to SVU. But how many others have been buried this way? How many stay labeled wrong on purpose? Then there's the preschool aid incident. According to an email Rich received, the woman had locked toddlers in a dark bathroom and held the door shut with her foot. And what did the school do? Reassigned her to another classroom.
I've got one more. I forgot. But basically a preschool, either teacher's aide or teacher, in order to discipline, this is preschool kids, in order to discipline the kids in preschool, she would put them in the bathroom and turn off the lights and then put her foot against the door so the kid's gonna get out.
What?
Well, that's fucking
And
mean.
that's like sensory deprivation. Like that's how you like
That's
mess with
cruel and
people's
unusual
mind.
punishment.
That person is still at the school. That person's just not allowed in that classroom anymore.
Wait, they fucking kept, they weren't fired?
They're still in the same school.
They're still around kids?
Still employed, apparently, just not with toddlers, because that makes it right. That was the problem, is the damn toddlers. Other emails allege the director of school safety was a fired cop who got hired thanks to personal ties with the superintendent. He's allegedly been internally investigated for mistreating employees. And guess what? The local news refused to report on that. Another email pointed to a vice principal who has been shuffled from school to school, allegedly to avoid fallout from repeated sexual misconduct complaints. A Freedom of Information Act request is currently in progress to verify those claims. And if you think that's where this trail ends, it doesn't. A Freedom of Information Act request filed by journalist Nate Benson revealed that from September 2021 to May 2025, Buffalo police were called to schools nearly 18,000 times. That includes 181 fights, 176 assaults, 162 missing children under the age of 12, 126 additional assault incidents, and the part that's really fucking suspect, 54% of those calls, which is over 9,600, were labeled miscellaneous or direct patrol. What is the translation of that? Paper shredding in real time. And speaking of shredded paper, or in this case, smashed phones, John M. Palmara from the district's finance office allegedly destroyed a phone during an independent audit. Auditors were asking about missing records. Suddenly, the phone didn't exist anymore. It's one way to deal with evidence, I guess, destroying it. That wasn't the only audit-related dodge either, and it raises the same question that a lot of people are starting to ask. If they're willing to go to these lengths to avoid scrutiny, what else is buried? Fat Electrician reached out to the Erie County District Attorney to ask if they were planning an investigation. The DA's office said they couldn't comment, which, let's be honest, probably tells us everything we need to know, because if there was an investigation in progress, there'd be no actual reason not to say so with as much public attention that's on this. And if there wasn't, then what does that tell you? Maybe they already know what they'd find. It's clear that this isn't just about a few bad actors or isolated fuck-ups. This is a system built on silence and protected by fear. But people are done being quiet. People are asking questions now. And so were all of you. There were hundreds of questions and comments on the first video, maybe even thousands. So I reached out to Angrycops directly on X to answer some of them. I asked him if his department is behind him. Now, he said he can't officially comment on that, but plenty of fellow officers have voiced their support for him. I asked him, has there been any professional backlash? He says not to him directly, but those around him are catching heat. When asked, how's the local attitude, towards him in the situation, he says most of it is aimed at Buffalo public schools. People are pissed, and rightfully fucking so. When asked about how he felt about Reddit deleting comments and silencing people, he says it's really disappointing that Reddit is actively suppressing people for sticking up for children. I tend to agree. I asked him, do you think this will help other cases? Rich hopes that this motivates others both locally and across the country to come forward and fight for kids. And what's his end goal with all this? Well, of course, he wants a real investigation, accountability, and to end the fear and pain that Buffalo Public Schools has built into its culture. Now, there is no current legal defense fund, which was another question people asked. But the moment legal action is taken against him, he will make it public and begin that process. So, to the media who tried to pretend Rich was the story, fuck you, you failed. To the Buffalo school system, still hoping this will all blow over, we're here, we're louder now, we're all paying attention. If you're a parent and your kid reported something, but it never got followed up on, go down to your police precinct and ask for a copy of the report. If it says information only or doesn't exist, you've got your answer. And if you're a parent, student, or teacher with information about incidents that may have been mishandled by the Buffalo Public Schools system, please email takethehighroad@gmail.com. I know plenty of people already have, but the more, the better. People are paying attention now. Investigations are underway. And if the district retaliates against Rich, we'll be louder. And probably drunk and burping. Because fuck you, that's why.